In the early 20th century, radium was one of the most prized substances on Earth. It glowed in the dark, it symbolized modern science, and it was considered a medical breakthrough. But inside watch factories in New Jersey and Illinois, young women were being exposed to radium daily. They were later called the Radium Girls. Their fight would help change American labor law forever. Radium was discovered in 1898 by Marie Curie and Pierre Curie. By the 1910s and 1920s, radium had become a commercial sensation in the United States. It was used in medical treatments, especially for cancer, consumer products like Luminous clocks and watches, even novelty health tonics and cosmetics. At the time, the long-term biological dangers of radiation were not fully understood by the public, though scientific literature was already beginning to raise concerns. When World War I began, the U.S. military needed luminous watch dials for soldiers fighting at night. That demand created jobs.
The primary employer was the United States Radium Corporation, based in Orange, New Jersey.
Later, similar work was done at the Radium Dial Company in Ottawa, Illinois.
The dial painters were mostly young women, many teenagers, because they were believed to have steadier hands for detailed brushwork.
The job paid relatively well compared to other factory work available to women at the time.
To paint fine numbers on watch faces, workers were trained to shape their brushes by placing the bristles between their lips, a technique known as lip pointing. They would put the brush in their mouth to sharpen it, dip it in radium paint, paint the dial, repeat hundreds of times per shift. This process led them to ingest small amounts of radium daily. Importantly, while company scientists handled radium with protective equipment, the dial painters were not given the same precautions. At the time, management publicly maintained that the material was safe in the quantities used. By the early 1920s, former dial painters began reporting severe health problems. Common symptoms included
Severe anemia, bone fractures, jaw infections, tooth loss, chronic pain, necrosis of the jawbone, later termed radium jaw.
Radium behaves chemically like calcium. When ingested, the body deposits it into bones. There, it emits alpha radiation, damaging surrounding tissue and bone marrow.
In several cases, the jawbone deteriorated to such an extent that portions could be removed with minimal resistance.
Some women developed sarcomas, aggressive bone cancers. These were not isolated incidents.
In 1925, pathologist Dr. Harrison Martland conducted critical research linking the illnesses to radium ingestion. He demonstrated that the workers' bodies were radioactive and that radium had accumulated in their bones.
This research helped establish a clear causal connection between their employment and their medical conditions. The science was no longer ambiguous. One of the most well-known plaintiffs was Grace Fryer, who had worked at the New Jersey plant. By the mid-1920s, she was seriously ill.
In 1927, she and 4 other former workers filed suit against the United States Radium Corporation.
At the time, suing an employer for occupational illness was extremely difficult. Workers' compensation laws were still developing, and companies often had significant legal resources. The company's defense strategies included challenging medical evidence, questioning the women's credibility, attempting procedural delays. The case drew national press attention. In 1928, a settlement was reached. The women received financial compensation and coverage for medical expenses. Though many were already in advanced stages of illness, several plaintiffs died within years of the settlement.
A similar situation unfolded at the Radium Dial Company in Illinois during the 1930s. Workers there also developed radiation-related illnesses and eventually pursued legal action.
The Illinois cases further strengthened legal recognition of occupational disease claims.
These lawsuits contributed significantly to the evolving legal doctrine that employers could be held liable for long-term workplace hazards.
The Radium Girls cases had several lasting effects. 1. Scientific impact.
Helped establish standards for safe radiation exposure. Advanced understanding of internal radiation poisoning.
2. Legal impact. Strengthened workers' rights to sue for occupational disease. Influenced the development of workplace safety regulations. 3. regulatory legacy contributed to the broader movement that eventually led to federal oversight agencies,
such as the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, established in 1970. The case has also reshaped corporate accountability in the United States. It is important not to exaggerate the numbers. While hundreds worked as dial painters, the confirmed number of severe radiation-related deaths was smaller than popular retellings sometimes suggest. However, the suffering of those affected was profound and medically documented. Their conditions were among the first clear demonstrations of the dangers of chronic internal radiation exposure. Some exhumed remains decades later were still measurably radioactive, a testament to radium's long half-life of approximately 1,600 years. The Radium Girls were not activists at the start. They were young workers participating in what seemed like modern progress. They trusted the science as it was presented to them. They trusted their employer. When that trust was broken, they did something extraordinary for the time. They went to court. Their cases helped establish that corporations could be held responsible for invisible, long-term harm. Today, workplace safety standards, radiation handling protocols, and occupational disease protections exist in part because of their fight. Their story is not just about tragedy. It is about accountability, it is about science catching up to industry, and it is about young women who helped reshape labor law, even as their own health failed.
The glow that once symbolized progress became a warning, and that warning changed history.